Hey there, my name's Alex and I've been a beekeeper for the past 4 years now, and in this video I want to show you everything that I've learned about the world of beekeeping. As you can see behind me, I've got quite a few bees now. I've got 9 beehives, and with the weather being so good, they're flying so much. They're all buzzing around the front of the hives, and I haven't actually gone inside the hives this year yet. We're gonna get to it. We're gonna open up the boxes and see what work we have to do. So beekeeping is the practice of looking after bee colonies with the primary goal of harvesting honey. My aim has always been to harvest maximum honey to share with my friends and family, and if I have any excess, I try to sell it in hope to earn back some of the money that I've spent on beekeeping. Back in 2022, I had my first honey harvest of 12 kilograms. 1 year later, my second harvest came in and I had a total of 68 kilograms. And due to some big mistakes on my behalf, my last year's honey harvest that should have been around 60 to 70 kilograms ended up being 25 after most of it was robbed by other bees just before I harvested it. I've learned lots over the past 4 years by making a whole load of mistakes, but this year I'm aiming for a much larger honey crop. So the first thing we need to do before we start looking through the beehives is put on a bee suit. Now, a bee suit is basically just a protective suit that covers all your skin and means that you don't get stung by the bees. The bees might still try to sting you, but they won't get through this thick material. It actually doesn't stop you from getting stung completely, because sometimes the bees manage to push their stinger through the material, and other times they find a way in, like through where the armholes connect, or sometimes up through the ankle area. But whenever I do beekeeping, I like to wear my suit because it prevents you getting stung most of the time. And lots of people have asked me what bee suit I have, because you can buy a variety of types of bee suit. You can get some very cheap ones online and others which are more expensive. This one is, I think it's Swainty Breeze. Swainty is the brand, and then Breeze is the type of, the exact model. But this one is particularly special because it has a certain material which allows airflow. Now when you're wearing a bee suit, especially in the summer, it can get so hot inside and you sweat loads and it's not too comfortable. So this particular one has really nice nice air circulation. But to be honest, any bee suit will do. But I've just found over the years that this particular one is really good. If I expected my bees to be really angry today, which sometimes they are, I would definitely recommend putting boots on rather than shoes. Most of the bee action is around the head area, so this is the most important area to be protected. But today I'm gonna roll with my trainers. It should be okay. So glove choice is a subject of much discussion because there's pros and cons to different types of gloves. If you wear a thick leather glove, you're probably never going to be stung on your hands, which is really good, you would think. But there are disadvantages to that. When you wear a really thick glove, you can't feel through the glove. You don't know when you might be accidentally squishing a bee, or you basically just don't have as much sense in your fingers. So I like to use these. These are nitrile kitchen gloves, I guess. Obviously the downside is they're quite thin. The bees can sometimes poke their stinger through. It does happen from time to time, but not as much as you might think. I think the feel of the glove, if it doesn't feel like a animal's skin, so the bee doesn't want to really bother stinging it. With these nitrile gloves, I do get stung, but only every now and then. It doesn't happen often. But having some kind of glove is really important if you don't want to be stung so much. I would really like to beekeep without any gloves because it's so nice being able to really feel through your fingers the frames as you're picking them up. And also when the bees are crawling on your hand, it's a crazy cool feeling. And with gloves, you don't really get that. But from a sort of a safety point of view, it's probably good to wear some gloves. So is getting stung by a honeybee dangerous? For most people, no. Of course, in pretty much all cases, the sting will hurt. At first, a sharp needle-like pain, and then itchiness and swelling can occur over the following day or two. The severeness of a sting depends on where on the body you get stung, and also how deep the bee gets the stinger into your skin. That being said, a very small percentage of the population, AI told me it's less than 1%, suffer from more serious reactions to bee stings, which can lead to anaphylaxis, which can be deadly. When I first started beekeeping, I'd never been stung by a honeybee before, and I had no idea what my reaction would be like, so I'd always make sure I was nearby help if things did go badly. I think most people who suffer from allergic reactions to bee stings carry an adrenaline injection, like an EpiPen, just in case they do have a bad reaction. But I don't mean to scare you, it's just good to understand the risks. So inside this bucket is a useful tool for beekeepers, and it's called a Hive tool. Basically just a piece of metal with a sharp edge here, like a sharp right angle, and this hook on the other side. The hook is used for like putting under the frames and lifting the frames out. And this sharp edge here is used to scrape off bits of wax and clean surfaces. You'll learn a little more about why this is useful as we go through and look through the hives. You'll see it in action. Anyway, inside this bucket isn't just water. It's a mix of soda crystals and water. Soda crystals is one of the only things that allows you to clean equipment. There's not many other things that you can clean off the wax and clean off the propolis, which the bees use to like glue stuff together. So this Hive tool here is perfectly clean, and every time I finish my beekeeping day, I put this back in the bucket and it cleans, so that next time I can take it out and it's fresh and ready to use. You'll probably recognize what this is. This is a bee smoker. It basically is a way that you can make smoke and blow it on the bees. And you might be wondering, why do you want to blow smoke on your bees? Surely that really annoys them. I don't personally know if it makes them angry or not, but what I do know is it really helps with the actual beekeeping and picking up the frames. When you blow smoke onto the bees, it sort of moves them out the way. I mean, if someone was blowing smoke at me, I would definitely get out the way of it. And it does the same to the bees. You blow the smoke on them and it moves them to a different part of the hive and allows you to get your fingers in and pick up the frames without squishing bees. Sometimes the hives can get so congested with bees, there's no place that you can actually put your fingers on to pick up the frames, so you need a bit of smoke to move them out the way. Smoke is also apparently good for calming the bees down. However, I find this is very temporary. Like, you can blow a couple of puffs of smoke, they calm down, but then they very quickly can get angry again. And what I use to light the smoker is firstly birch bark. This is a great like fire lighting material. I pull that off a birch tree in my dad's garden, and it's great for fire starting. And then I've also just got this packaging material which keeps the smoker going. So kind of the way I do it is I get the lighter, I light up the birch bark. When it's too windy, you've got to use a different tool, also known as a blowtorch. That's more like it. And then you can just stuff in some more material. Now you can use pretty much anything, any natural flammable material for your smoker. You can use pine cones, you can use dry grass, you can use straw or hay. I just found this packaging material is free and it works really well. And then we can close it up and we've got nice puffs of smoke. So let's have a look in the beehives. This is the first time I've looked in these hives in the last 4 months, I think. Wow. So I really don't know exactly what we're going to find. We've got to check that there is a queen in there and that the queen is healthy and laying eggs. We will check if the bees have enough space, and it's just sort of a general inspection to check if everything's going as it should be. There are plenty of bees in there. Now I remember this time last year the size of my colonies were much smaller, so that's already a good sight. So before we go any further, it's probably a good idea to understand how a beehive works. So to put it simply, a beehive is a house for a single colony of bees. The amount of bees in a hive varies throughout the year. In the summer, a single colony can have upwards of 50,000 bees, but in the winter, this drops massively to around 5,000. These are very rough figures, by the way. I've never actually counted the bees myself. The beehives that you see, the wooden boxes that beekeepers have, they're only a very recent invention in the grand scheme of things. People have been keeping bees for about 10,000 years, like actually looking after them for honey production. But bees have been around for a lot longer than that. I think bees have been knocking around for about 100 million years. You can see that humans haven't been keeping bees that long. But I guess that before humans were keeping bees in boxes, we were still harvesting honey, most likely by going into a wild nest and sticking our hands in and grabbing out some of the honeycomb. I imagine getting stung quite a lot in the process, but humans would have done it like bears do it now. But in a similar way that humans decided to start cultivating plants and do farming, they also realized that they could probably get their hands on honey easier if they kept bees in a more like farm animal way. Bee farming practices have come a long way in recent times. People have designed and created many different types of beehives, and they've actually cultivated different strains of bees so that they have desirable traits, like that they don't sting you as much, and they produce more honey, and they're resilient to diseases. And I guess a big leap forward was made in around the 1800s when a guy called Mr. Langstroth, he invented a type of beehive which included movable frames. So you could actually take the frames out and move them. Now this is the type of beehive that I have been using for the past 3 years, and what pretty much every beekeeper uses in the world these days, because it's so practical. It's made up of a box with 10 or so wooden frames in, and the comb is kept within the parameters of the wooden frame, meaning that you can pull out the whole comb. This opens up many possibilities for the beekeeper. It's easier to inspect the bees during swarm season and check for queen cells being built. It allows the beekeeper to take out and move the frames around, combine with other hives, and make swarm control manipulations. And when it comes to honey harvesting, the honey frames can simply be removed and placed into a spinning extractor. The movable frame hive has also allowed beekeepers to harvest crazy amounts of honey. I read a book by a guy called Ormond. In 1974, Ormond managed to harvest 404 pounds of honey. That's 183 kilograms of honey from one beehive. Look, there's a picture on the back of one of his beehives. Those are all honey boxes on top. It must have been so unstable. Now there's a few different varieties of hive, all based on the Langstroth movable hive design. There's hives with different dimensions, some which are slightly bigger than others, some which are slightly wider than others. But the type of beehive that I use, and what I think most people in the UK use, is called a national hive. Now the national size is, I think, 460mm by 460mm. That's like the dimensions of the boxes that you use. So when I go and buy new equipment, I always get national size stuff. Does that make sense?
So on the edge of the hive, there's not much happening. This is just a frame with nothing on it. There's just some foundation. Basically, it's just some beeswax that I put in there. So you can sort of see, it's like a ball. In the middle is where the queen lays all the eggs, and towards the outside, the bees store honey and pollen. And right on the edge, sometimes, as we saw with this frame, there's not much going on at all. But we're gonna open up and have a look at the whole hive. So on here, you can see more stuff happening. That there is honey. Oh, this frame already I can feel has more stuff in there. It's heavier. There's more bees on there, and there's also more honey stored. So that side has honey, and this side has honey and also pollen. It might be quite hard to see, but in there's lots of different colored pieces of pollen. There's green, there's orange, there's red, yellow. So what we've seen in there so far is honey and pollen, both really good things. Oh yes, and another really good sight, and that is brood. Now what exactly is brood? Brood is the baby bees that are being born. And that's really important to see because it means that there is a queen in here laying eggs. And if you look really closely inside the cells, you can see eggs. The eggs are like tiny grains of rice. You can barely see them with your naked eye, but in lots of these cells are eggs, which is fantastic to see. It means that there is a queen in this hive and it's laying eggs. If I move these bees out the way, you can see all that brown stuff there. Underneath those brown cappings are baby bees, which will be born within a matter of days. So from what I've seen so far, I already know that this colony is doing well. They have pollen, they have honey stores, they have brood in all stages, which is really important. Brood in all stages means that there's basically brood at the egg stage, there's brood at the larval stage, and there's brood which is about to be hatching out. So there's everything in this hive that we need, which is amazing. It means that this hive is ready to go on throughout this year and expand and hopefully make us a load of honey. There's quite a few bees carrying pollen sacs, which is nice. There we have another whole frame of brood, like capped over brood. And from seeing this, with all that brood capped over, and also the same on that side, I know that in a couple of weeks, there's gonna be so many more bees in this hive. You can almost predict how the hive will look in the future, like in a few weeks ahead, when all those bees hatch. These bees aren't too angry. As you can see, there's not many flying around my face, there's not many getting angry, so you don't really need much smoke. But if I do blow a bit of smoke over them, they make a little bit of a fuss at first, but they sort of disappear down into the frames, and it makes it much easier to go in and manage. So there is the queen, and I know it's the same queen that was in here last year because it's got the green dot on its head. That bee there, that single bee, is responsible for all the other ones. Like that, all these ones are this one's daughters. It's the mama bee. And that bee is slightly bigger than all the others. It has a longer abdomen, and it's the only bee in the hive which is actually fertile. It's the only one that can lay eggs. Everything is good in this hive. Wow, I'm very pleased. Oh, that one's really heavy. I wish I could like hand this to you so you could feel the weight of it, because it's so much heavier than the other ones, and that's because it's stacked full of honey. All of that there is thick with honey. And then there's the other end of the hive, a little bit of honey in there. That hive is set to go for this spring. Now, because everything in this hive is looking good, there's not much I need to do. But the one thing I will do is put on a couple of different bits of equipment onto the hive. First is this. This is basically a piece of plastic with holes in. But the interesting thing about this piece of plastic is the size of the holes. All the worker bees can get through these holes. They can squeeze through these gaps and get through, but the queen can't. So basically what we do is we put this on top, and on top of that, we're gonna put this extra box. This is called a super. Super comes from the word superfluous, which is like extra, on top of. So it's basically an extra box that goes on top of the brood area, and this is where the honey will be stored. So because we've got holes there that the queen can't get through, this can go on top, and the worker bees will go up and make their honey, and the queen won't go up and lay eggs. We know that in here is just going to be honey. I'll pull out a frame. So this is what it looks like currently. It's just the empty comb. And then on top of the honey box goes the lid. On goes the roof. And that's one hive checked and all good. I like to put a couple of bricks on top of the hives. It gives me a little bit of confidence that the wind isn't going to blow it down, and also sometimes you have animals which like to rub themselves against the hives, and that can also knock them over. So the plan now is to go through all the hives, do the same thing, check what's going on, maybe add a honey box if the colony is looking healthy. That's 1 out of 1, all good though.
The first time you look through a colony of bees, it can be really overwhelming, so I'll try to explain some of the details to look out for. Firstly, there are 3 different groups of bees in the hive. A colony is made up of mostly female worker bees. As the name suggests, these bees do all the work. They build the fresh wax comb, they forage the nectar and pollen, and they make all the honey. Then you've got the male bees, known as the drones. These are slightly bigger than the worker bees, and their job is to mate with queen bees. And lastly, you've got the queen bee. In almost all cases, there will only be 1 queen bee in a colony, and her role is to lay eggs. I've heard that a queen can lay up to 2,000 eggs a day, but I should add, the drones in a colony do not mate with the same colony's queen, otherwise this would cause inbreeding and possibly lead to genetic disorders and also reduce genetic diversity. On a frame of brood, you can tell what type of bee will be born due to the characteristics of the cells. A worker cell pretty much lays flat against the comb. A drone cell is much more mounded, and a queen cell hangs vertically off the frame and is much larger than the others. Seeing all these things tells us a lot about a colony and its health. The cells are where the bees also store their nectar and pollen. Brood are always in the centre and food stores around the outside.
My memory is really bad, so I forget what's going on in all the different hives. So I basically have a little red number tag on each hive, and with that I also have a notebook where I write down like my notes of what I've seen in each hive, and I can write hive number 8 blah 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 blah, and it just helps with sort of managing the hives and keeping an eye on what's going on. You can hear that crack when I opened it up, and that is where the bees have stuck the beehive parts together using propolis. Whoa! There's even more bees in this one. So this one, there's bees covering like almost the whole thing. So there's lots of honey being stored in here, which is good. Often you want to look inside the cells to see what's in there. Like, I'm trying to currently find eggs. I'm trying to see inside the cells, but the light doesn't always allow to see inside. Oh no, I can see now. Sometimes you catch the light in the right way and you're able to see better. Also, sometimes blowing on the bees makes them move out the way. There's no eggs in there, strangely. So we might have a problem with this hive. We're gonna keep looking through though. You see that smoke there? Moved the bees out the way, so I can now grab it without squishing any. Oh, they've built a load of comb under there. Yeah, empty cells, no eggs, no brood. Which is very strange because the colony looks really strong otherwise. Like, there's a lot of bees in there, so I don't know where the queen is. Now, if I were to just leave this hive and not do anything, this hive would slowly just die. There's no queen in there. There's no one laying eggs, which means the older bees will slowly die off until there's nothing left. So what can I do to solve this problem? Basically, I need to somehow get them a queen. There's multiple ways to do this. Over the years, I've let my own bees raise their own queens. You basically give them some eggs from another hive and they will make a new queen from them. But that does take some time and patience. I could join this hive with another one. So I could plonk this box on top of, say, this one here, which has a queen. They would, over the course of a few days, combine and make one colony. Like joining 2 colonies and putting them together to create an extra big workforce. But this hive is already so strong and looking so good. I want to keep this as its own colony. So what I'm going to do is contact my bee dealer. There's actually people around the UK and around the world who breed bees. Their job is to raise queens
and sell them to beekeepers like me. Like, I just had this problem, I'm in need of a queen, and yeah, I'm gonna contact Lawrence at Black Mountain Honey. He basically sells queen bees, and they're already mated as well. So I can simply put that queen into this hive, and then this colony will be healthy and happy again. It will be creating more eggs, and it'll be functioning properly. So there's not much more I can do with this hive. I know that it needs a queen, and I will get a new queen ordered for this hive. So with beekeeping, once you know how to manage one hive, it's then not too different if you had, you know, 100 more. You're doing the same things, you're looking for the same things inside the hive, which means it's a very scalable sort of hobby. And it's why I think lots of people turn their hobby of beekeeping into a business. It's because it's a very sort of, yeah, an easy thing to scale up if you have the space and the time. Because when you have more and more hives, obviously it takes a lot more time to manage them.
It's taken me the last 4 years to grow my apiary up to 9 hives. I started with just one that I was given by a fellow beekeeper, which I then divided in the first year to create 2. Then during my second year, I once again split the hives up and ended up with 4 hives. That winter, 2 of them died, so I was back to 2 again. But then last year, I made it my main aim to expand my apiary, and as well as splitting the hives, I also bought a few more too. This splitting of the hives massively reduced last year's honey crop, but it meant that I went into last winter with 9 colonies. Each winter it's common to have losses, but from what I can see, all my hives have bees flying out the entrances, which is a really nice surprise, and I wasn't expecting them all to survive.
Interesting thing I've just seen, there's a spider inside. Now the spiders, I like to keep them. I don't see them as a problem. If anything, they eat the pests that get into the hive. So I think seeing a few spiders is a good thing. My pet spider. You can see the bees coming out the top. I think there's quite a few bees inside this hive. These ones are a little more active. You can see they're flying around a bit more. But there are a lot of bees inside this hive. Oh, it's heavy. There's all, oh wow. Look at the color. I don't know whether you can notice, but the color of this frame is amazing. It's like really mustardy yellow. And inside, it's full of nectar. Oh, it makes me hungry just looking at it. I want to get some bread and put it on there. That's a man bee, and all the others are lady bees. Yay, that's a good sign. Fresh brood. All of that is brood, which will hatch out soon. But you can see all of that lovely fresh brood. That looks amazing. There's actually bees here dancing. I don't think they're actually dancing like humans would. They're more communicating with their fellow colleagues about like where the nectar sources are. There's a couple of different dances that bees do, but they call it the waggle dance because they sort of wiggle around on the frame, and the way in which they wiggle tells the other bees like how far away the nectar source is and where they need to go. It's just their sort of language. Like humans talk and bees dance. Oh, there's the queen. This one also has a green dot. Now the colour of the queen tells us like how old the queen is. Green is the colour for last year. So it was born last year, and it allows the beekeeper to sort of keep track of how old their queens are. This one's young and healthy and laying loads of eggs, which is great. The hives are looking so much more healthy than they did at this time last year. Another frame just full of honey. So because this hive is also just looking so healthy, I'm going to put on a honey box. So once again, first goes the queen excluder.
And then the box, which will be full of honey.
Sometimes people ask me, how much space do I need if I want to do beekeeping? The answer to that question varies depending on what scale your beekeeping project is at. If you just have 1 or 2 hives, then you could probably store all your beekeeping equipment in your bedroom, like I did for my first couple of years. However, when things start to scale up, and where I am right now is with 9 beehives, you have to think about where you're gonna actually keep all your equipment. Because on each beehive, you might have 3 supers, which are the honey boxes, and you need somewhere to store them. So if you have 3 supers on each of your 9 hives, that's 27 boxes. So that is a honey super. And you might be wondering, why is it wrapped up in plastic wrap? Well, there's a very good reason for that. And it's because there are a number of things that like eating the sticky, sweet combs that we have in here. If I didn't wrap this up, they would almost certainly have been eaten by mice. When I came in here after the winter, there were mouse droppings everywhere. The mice had also eaten all of my malt that I wanted to use for making beer. Now, the other thing that will eat the wax is something called a wax moth, which, when it's in its larval stage, will eat through the comb. Now, when I first started beekeeping, I didn't think it would be a problem. As often happens, I don't really think about something until it becomes a problem. And the first winter of storing my equipment uncovered, yeah, my comb had been destroyed by this wax moth larvae. So they go around the comb, eating it all, and then they go into these cocoons. Maybe there's one inside here, we might be able to see one. You can see that they've tunneled through this area here, but they haven't actually eaten too much. There it is. That's one ugly looking insect. And that little insect there can absolutely destroy your beekeeping equipment in the winter. Their diet is beeswax. If you look at the ecosystem as a whole, they're good animals to have. They are like the cleaners of the wax. So in natural beehives out in the wild, they would come along, and if a beehive had died, these animals would clean it up and recycle all the materials. But as a beekeeper, these things are not good. Luckily, my lockup is only 15 to 20 minutes drive away from my bees, and I actually really like the drive over there, through Bristol, over the Suspension Bridge, and into the countryside. It also really helps being able to drive right up to the beehives, meaning I never have to carry any equipment that far. Anyway, back to checking through the hives. Whoa! I think they're getting a bit congested in there. The bees are overflowing. What?
So this queen has got a pink dot, which means it was born 2023. And she's doing really well. She's laying so many eggs. Very healthy hive, it seems. So interestingly, not all bees have the same temperament. Some bees get angrier than others. And this colony here is the calmest colony of bees I have ever owned. I actually got this one from Black Mountain Honey, and the guy who breeds the bees there, he puts a lot of effort and time into selecting really good genetics, calm genetics. So the bees that I got from him are super calm. Like, I can wave my hand over the top. None of them are getting angry. Whereas if I did that with one of my other colonies, they would be jumping up at me, and it wouldn't be so relaxed and calm. I would probably say, if you're getting into beekeeping, reach out to a local bee farmer who breeds bees for their calmness, because keeping bees is much more enjoyable and relaxing if your bees are calm, compared to keeping bees that are constantly trying to sting you. They walk around slower and they make less noise. It's quite amazing. We're moving on to the last 2 hives. Now, the last one we looked at was so calm. Now, they're my calmest bees, and these two here are my least calm bees. So I'm hoping they're not going to be in too bad of a mood today. Let's have a quick run through and just double check that the queen is laying eggs, which she is. Yeah, that's what you want to see. If I shake these bees off, you can see that whole thing, all of that is capped over brood. And the same with the other side. The bees are going a little bit crazy now. I'll be honest, it gets quite tiring when you've been looking through beehives for quite a few hours. I find it's my back which hurts the most, constantly bending over. But I'm really happy with what I've seen today. Pretty much all my hives are looking really healthy. It was only a couple which were strangely missing queens. If I'm gonna be stung today, it's gonna be with these ones. They are way more aggressive. But aggressive bees doesn't mean unhealthy. It just means that they're kind of a little bit harder to look through. It's less peaceful. There's eggs in there though, which is good to see. I don't have enough frames for this box. They're meant to have 9 frames in, but I don't have enough, I guess. So I need to go to my lockup tomorrow and make up some more. But for now, I'm gonna put this on top just to give them some more space. And there we go. That is the first inspection on the bees of the year. I'm very, very happy with what I've seen. All the colonies have survived through the winter, which is amazing. Every single hive has now got a honey box on top, which has done a couple of things. It gives the bees a bit more space, and it also gives the bees somewhere to store the honey. If we get a nectar flow at some point soon, the bees need somewhere to store all that nectar, and they can now store it in these top boxes. Now, the next few months are the busiest for a beekeeper because there's quite a few things you have to do. Now, firstly, we need to keep an eye on the amount of honey that the bees are bringing in and add more of these honey boxes throughout the season. And also, probably the biggest thing a beekeeper has to manage is swarming.
Swarming is the reproduction of honeybee colonies. In the spring and summer months, a colony of honeybees will start making swarm preparations. Inside the hive, it involves the bees making queen cells. Once these queen cells reach a certain age, this is normally around 8 days from the moment the egg is laid in the cell, many of the bees, as well as the original queen bee, will fly away and start a new life in a new home. In the original box, a new queen will be born and take the place of the old queen. This sounds good because it results in more bee colonies. However, for beekeepers, when half the colony flies away, they lose half their workforce, and so this reduces the honey crop massively. But beekeepers have found many creative ways to reduce the chance of losing bees, and I'll be doing some manipulations within the hives over the next month in hope to keep all my bees where they are and hopefully not lose any of them, which will increase this year's honey crop.
It seems that we had some storms over the winter, and I only just realized that there's this massive, great big branch just above my head whilst I was doing all the beekeeping. So I'm gonna try and get it down. Wow, imagine if that had fallen on my head. Cool, all done.
In this little blue cage is a queen bee. It's actually a mated queen bee, so it's already gone out and mated. So I can basically put this straight into one of my hives, and then it will start laying eggs pretty much straight away. As well as the queen, there is also a number of worker bees inside this cage with her. They're basically there to look after the queen. My job for today is to put this cage into the hive which doesn't have a queen, and over the next week the bees will chew through this sugar here. This white stuff is sugar, and the new queen will be released into the hive. Let's give the beehive a new queen.
So this is the colony which needs a new queen. I'm going to poke a stick through the little hole in the top, and we're just going to hang the cage in the hive. Now the queen can't get out of the cage yet because there's 2 plastic things holding the queen in.
we want to introduce her slowly. So these bees get used to her smell and hopefully they'll accept her. But in a couple of days' time, I'll come back, open up the plastic caps on the cage, and then the queen will be able to slowly be eaten out through that sugar. So right now I'm standing next to a giant tower of beehive boxes. Now these are all second-hand. They were used by another beekeeper last year. They've had bees living inside them, which means before I put them on my hives this summer, I need to give them a quick clean. This will involve 2 different stages. Firstly, scraping all the wax and dirt off, and then blowtorching them with a flame. The heat will kill off any diseases that might be inside the hives. You might be wondering, why do you need so many boxes? To give you a quick example, in the summer months, you can have up to like 10 boxes on top of your hive. And because now I've expanded my apiary up to 9 beehives, if each of those colonies has like 6 boxes on, that's 54 of these wooden boxes. So it took me about 3 or 4 hours, but I have all these boxes now clean. All of them have been blowtorched and the wax scraped off. But as you can see, currently these boxes are empty. There's nothing inside them. And before we put these on the beehives, we need to fill them with frames. Now this is an example of what a frame looks like, which hasn't been worked on by bees yet. This is basically just a wooden frame with a piece of foundation beeswax. And then what the bees do is they build their comb off of this. I'll show you here. This is one that has been worked on by bees. This is an old one. Now I only have 3 or 4 of these left, and I'm gonna need a fair few more because in each of these boxes you can fit about 10. So that's about 300 of these that we need. And if it's a really good year for the honey, we're gonna have to use all of these. So where do you get more of these from? You can find all this beekeeping equipment online. There's various different beekeeping supplies out there. But I like to support some of the people who helped me get into beekeeping in the first place. In particular, there's a guy who lives in Wales. He has a beekeeping business called Griffith, and he sells not only honey and wax, but also all the beekeeping equipment that you would ever need as a beekeeper. So the plan tomorrow morning is to drive over and see him and pick up some more beehive frames.
Hello, my name is Griff Rees. I'm the owner of Requeening Griffith. We're a honey company and beekeeping supplies company here in West Wales. We sell honey, we sell bees, but we also sell beekeeping supplies from the farm here right across the whole of the UK.
I've come here today to pick up some new beekeeping equipment. Can we go in and have a look inside the shop?
Yeah, of course. Come with me and I'll show you around. This is your order.
Oh, nice.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, Griff is such a great guy. Seeing his beekeeping business grow is super inspiring, and it feels good to support his business and come and see him again. Anyway, time to go home and build some beehive frames. These are the pieces of wax foundation that go inside the frames. We have all the flat pack frames, a few different pieces which will all fit together to make all these frames. So we've got the 2 side walls of the frame, then the top bar, 2 more supporting pieces of wood, the piece of beeswax foundation, and then a load of nails. It's handy to have a hive tool and also a little hammer to put the frame together. So you break apart this piece of wood off the top bar. We've got the 2 side bars that we push in. These 2 pieces of wood slot into the top. And then we take the beeswax foundation and we thread it into the wooden frame. Bend these pieces of metal over, push it down to the bottom,
Get the wood that we broke apart earlier. Put 3 more nails in. 3 minutes 36 to make 1 frame. I've got to do over 200 of these. We're gonna spend about 600 minutes, 10 hours. And once the frame is finished, they go inside the box, like so. And then once this is full, this is ready to put on a beehive. Let's crack on. Now yesterday I spent nearly £600 on beekeeping equipment. And it sounds like a lot, and it really is a lot of money, but it's all an investment, and it will all pay back for itself if every single one of these frames is full of honey, which isn't guaranteed. I think lots of beekeepers around the UK mentioned that last year's honey crop wasn't too great, so maybe this year will be the year. And it all depends on many different factors: the weather, the bees' willingness to make you honey. I think quite a lot of luck as well. And this is what a full super looks like. In this one we've got 9 frames, equally spaced apart. This box here is ready to simply pop on top of one of the beehives. The bees can start working on the frames and fill them with honey. Oh, I'm so done with this. It's freezing. The rain is now being blown all the way into my lockup. Everything's wet out the front here. I have made 64 frames, which is a really good start. I'm kind of happy with the progress I've made over the past 5 hours or so. All we've got to hope for now is that the weather improves slightly, because the bees will not be going out and foraging nectar in this weather, which means 0 honey is going to be made. We need some sun, we need some warmth, and everything should be good. We're coming to the end of April now, and this is sort of beginning of prime swarm season. So today I'm going to do my normal weekly inspection on the hives, and also on some of the hives I'm going to do what is called a Demaree split, which is basically a swarm prevention method. I will run through the details of that later, but my van is packed full of boxes, and the bees right now are going absolutely crazy. The bees are piling into the hives. I might need to open up some of the entrances to let more bees into the hive, because they're all queuing up waiting to get in. And they're also bringing in loads of pollen. I can see on their legs lots of orange pollen, which I think is from dandelions. There are dandelions everywhere, and if I put my finger inside, there's orange pollen on my finger. I can probably remove this piece of foam and allow the bees to use the whole entrance. They can get in and out quicker now. It does make me very happy to see all the hives with this much activity outside. They're starting to store nectar in the super, which is good. I don't really need to check that. What is important is this bottom box, because this is the hive that I put a new queen in. So we're going to check to see if that new queen is laying eggs. Oh yes, 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 yes. There's eggs and there's brood, which is amazing. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Look at that. Loads of baby bees underneath that capping. So this was the cage that we put in a couple of weeks ago. That's now empty. I mean, there's a few bees that have somehow managed to get inside, but the queen has come out of that cage and is now laying eggs in the hive. So the job was done very well. If you look carefully, you'll see in those cells which aren't capped over, little white larvae. Now the capped over comb here is the older brood, and the stuff which isn't capped over is the younger brood that will be capped over soon. There she is in the center of the frame. She is laying loads of eggs. So that was all I needed to check with this hive. The only extra thing I'm going to do with this particular hive is put on another super. And basically by putting on another box, we're giving the bees plenty of space which will hopefully mean they are less likely to swarm. That particular colony isn't a huge one because they haven't had a queen for a while. So the colony was getting smaller and smaller. But these ones up here are much bigger. And they could be planning on swarming soon, so we may have to do some bits and bobs. Just opened up another hive and we can see loads of fresh nectar in there. When it catches the light nicely, you can see the liquid inside the cells. You can see the queen there, the green spot. That's last year's queen. She's laying eggs, no sign of swarm cells, which means this hive can be closed back up. Oh, okay. Every single frame of this super is just full of bees and fresh comb which is being drawn out, which looks super yellow. We'll pull one of the frames out and see how full they are. Woo. It's not quite full, but it's getting there. This frame has quite a bit of weight to it. If they keep filling it up at this rate, this could be a full super in the next week or so. See, there's a bit of comb that broke off. I might have that for myself. They will definitely need another super. Oh, that box is heavy already. I've never had a box feeling this heavy until like beginning of June, so that's really good. It's madness. They must be on a type of flower which means that they have really yellow wax. It's like, actually it's more orangey. It's like an orange. Now because this hive is looking so strong, I'm gonna do what is called a Demaree split. If I can find the queen, there she is. Wow, it was like magic, it just appeared. I'm gonna get the queen inside this cage. Queen's inside this little cage. I'm gonna double check that there's no swarm cells, and then we can do a Demaree split, which is a really cool method of preventing swarming from happening too soon, but also creating a really strong colony that will hopefully result in a good honey harvest. I think there's like 2,000 cells on a frame like this, so that could be 2,000 bees hatching out very soon. No swarm cells, which is good. So we've got the queen inside this cage. It's really important that she stays safe. And then we're going to take this box here, which is full of all the rest of the colony and all the brood and all the bees, and we're going to place it to one side. Just temporarily. And then we're going to put this brand new box, identical kind of box to that one, only difference is there's nothing in here. And we're going to put that down on the stand like that. All the bees that are flying will continue to come back to this exact point. So firstly, I'm going to grab a frame out of this original box, which has capped over brood. So we've got one of the original frames, and that is going in the middle of this box here. And also in this box, I've got a frame which is empty. There's a little bit of honey in there, which is good because it will give the bees some food. And that frame will go just next door, like so. And then I've got a couple more frames which are already drawn out comb that the queen can quickly start to lay her eggs in. And the rest of the box is just full of frames like this. There's nothing in there, just foundation. These are the frames that I made the other day. So the idea is that we're making the bees think that their colony isn't as big as it actually is. So now what we can do is release our queen back into this part of the hive. Whoa, I thought she was going to fly away then. Directly on top will go the queen excluder. So that will keep the queen in that bottom box. And then we can put on the first super, which is very quickly filling up with honey. And then we're actually going to add another super. It's a bit of a long process, but trust me, I did this last year and it worked really well.
And then we can grab the original brood box and pop that on top. That smoke always ends up going straight in my face. Basically what we've done is we've separated the colony. The queen is downstairs in the bottom box and the rest of the colony is at the top. The separation of those two supers will basically mean they act as separate colonies. This colony at the top will think that they've just lost the queen. So they will build new queen cells in the top. In 1 week's time, I need to come back and destroy all the queen cells in the top box. If I don't do that, then the colony could swarm. And then, after that, things should be all good. All the brood, all the baby bees that are hatching in this top box will then go down to help the workforce below. All the extra honey will then get stored in this top box too. I hope that makes some kind of sense. The Demaree split is basically a swarm prevention method. It doesn't stop swarming completely, but it helps delay swarming, and sometimes, like last year, it meant that I didn't have any swarms. We're probably going to do the same sort of thing on a couple of the other hives too. I've never had honey this early on in the year. That's amazing. So in this colony, we have seen one of the common problems that you have when you keep bees. And this is a queen which is laying an awful lot of drone brood. As you can see, it's very spotty as well. It's not like a nice clean amount of brood that you've seen on some of the other colonies. There is some worker brood down here, but as you can see, most of it is drone brood. And that can happen if the queen doesn't mate successfully. Now, I know from my previous inspections that this queen very recently was born and then went out and mated. And sometimes it results in a queen which hasn't managed to mate very well. There's a male bee which is making its way out of the comb. These male bees have huge eyes, and I will get a new queen ordered from my bee dealer. Yeah, get this hive nice and healthy again. Yeah, one of the sad truths that I've learned when it comes to beekeeping is that if you want the best for the colony, you sometimes have to sacrifice. I guess that goes for many things in life. You have to give up one thing to make the overall thing better. So I'll need to check this hive in 1 week to remove all the queen cells before I introduce a new queen. I've lost all the number tags for these hives, it's ridiculous.
Having a drone-laying queen is just one of the many things you have to look out for as a beekeeper. There's also pests and diseases that can wipe out your colonies. Bacterial infections such as American and European foulbrood are some of the most detrimental diseases that can result in having to burn your beehives and kill all the bees to stop the spread. More commonly, and within most honeybee colonies, you will see varroa, which are a species of mites that are non-native to the UK, and these parasite on honeybees. If numbers get too high within a colony, the bees can become weak and die, especially over wintertime when the bees are at their most vulnerable. In fact, each autumn after I've harvested the honey, I will treat the bees with a product containing either apitraz or thymol that will kill a large percentage of the mites and lower their levels in the hive before winter. I've learnt that ecosystems function as a whole, and whenever you step in, you will instantly see the consequences, normally in the form of other species making a living out of the one that you are trying to look after. It's a very complex system, but I think it's a good idea to remember that every decision that we make as either beekeepers or gardeners, or anyone really, has an effect on millions of other living things.
The bees have been really annoying, and they've built all this comb in between the frames. Because I'm using these spacers, I guess they just decided that they weren't going to build these frames out, they were going to just build extra frames in between. Oh, it's such beautiful comb that they've worked really hard to make, but it's not ideal that it's in that particular place. There's fresh honey coming in. Now all this wax that came off the super earlier, this isn't going to go to waste. I'm going to turn this into candles.
And that will make some really nice candles. Now let's look at my green hive. Look at that glistening honey. So I've seen a handful of queen cells inside this hive, and they will, if I don't do anything, swarm. So what I'm going to do is make a little split, which will stop the swarming from happening. And it'll also mean that I have an extra beehive. With this extra hive, I can either keep it and build it up and hopefully get a honey harvest from it, or I can then join it back with this one after the swarm impulse has sort of gone away a bit. So I'm going to take a couple of frames out of this 6-frame nuke box, and then we're going to choose a good looking frame to put inside there. This is probably the best frame that I've found. Just going to make sure there's no queen cells on this particular frame. And we're going to pop that in here. Now I'm just going to shake a load of bees into that box. Now most of these bees will come flying back to this original hive, so it doesn't matter that I'm shaking these all out. That should be enough. I've got bees all over my feet. Bees, I don't want them to crawl up my trousers, you see. So lastly, inside this box, we're going to put the queen. So we're taking the queen away from the original hive. And she's in there. And we'll close that up. Now we're going to move this over here. So this colony here has the original queen. That hive over there, over the next 8 days, will try to raise a new queen. And then I can either step in at that point, get rid of all the queen cells and put my own queen, or I can just let them raise a new queen. And then we have 2 colonies. So what we've done is we've split the hives up, and they will now no longer swarm. This hive here is the one that I always most look forward to checking. They're the calmest bees that I have. They're always so chill. They never I don't think I've ever been stung by this colony. Oh, it's loaded. Wow, it's full. Oh, there's queen cells in here though. Yep, there's a charged queen cell with an egg and royal jelly inside. So we're gonna have to do something here. Don't know what. Oh, there's a nut. Oh no. What I can see here are capped over queen cells, which basically means that they will swarm any moment now. It could have been yesterday, we might be too late, but it looks like there's a lot of bees still in here. There's one on the corner there. There's another one there. And on the other side, there's one there. If we find the queen, then we are incredibly lucky that it hasn't swarmed yet. Basically, on day 8, which is 8 days after the queen lays the egg, the queen cells are capped over, and it means that the old queen is then free to fly away. No way, she's still there. She's still there. I'm gonna catch her. So as before, we've got a frame full of brood, which we'll put in this downstairs box along with the queen. Now I've heard that the Demaree split doesn't always work to stop swarming if they've already made swarm cells. Like, it's a good preventative method, but apparently it doesn't always stop swarming completely, so we might have to keep an eye on this hive. So this sort of explains why I need to check my bee colonies weekly, because if I didn't come down for another couple of days, these bees would have flown away, or half of them would have flown away and started their own colony. You've got to be so careful that you don't miss any queen cells, because you miss one and it can result in swarming. I do really love the look of queen cells, and it's quite amazing. If I wanted to increase the amount of colonies I have, if I wanted loads more, I could take every single one of these queen cells and make a new colony of bees from it. But I don't really want to do that, which is why I'm taking them down. I've still got 2 more hives to check, but I think my camera is running out of battery, so that will be the filming done for today. I'm happy with today's beekeeping. I think everything's under control. I can never be sure though. I need to come down here with my grass trimmers next week. See you bees, have a good one. I can't believe how much honey they're finding right now. My favorite part of the day, eating the honey scrapings. That is so good. The wax is not so easy to chew up. I'm not sure the bees liked me doing that. So today I am going through all the colonies, but the ones that I'm going to show you are the hives which I did that Demaree split on recently. I can't quite believe this. Last week when I did the split, I added on a fresh super with nothing on it, nothing at all, just the foundation. And look what they've done. They have built the comb out and stored it with honey. That's in 1 week they've done all that. That's ridiculous. If you go for a walk anywhere, you will see so many flowers. In the parks, all the horse chestnut is flowering, and in the fields there's loads of dandelion. And also at this time of year is when brassica plants flower. If you've ever seen those fields which are just like a sea of yellow, that is oilseed rape. And the farmers plant that to end up with the canola oil or rapeseed oil. There's a lot of weight there now. Not great for the back. There's quite a lot of honey in there, but the thing which we really need to check is what is going on in this top box. Because this top box should have lots of queen cells in, which we need to remove. That looks like a drone brood, but that one is an emergency queen cell that they've built in response to me moving the boxes. So we're going to take that apart. This hive is going to be absolutely loaded come early June. It's really white. Last week it was more yellow. Now it's looking really white. But in here they've just started to store fresh nectar. And it looks like they've done the same in that last frame. So this colony is all good. A couple of queen cells, but we took them down. They shouldn't swarm anytime soon because of that fresh box down there. And pop this frame back in and leave them to it. I'm going to do that same check on all the other hives. Gets a little bit repetitive, but it's got to be done. So the Demaree split that I did last week, on most of the hives it was a preemptive split, which means they hadn't began to build queen cells. I was splitting up the hive before they decided to build queen cells and swarm. But this hive here, they already had queen cells. I did a Demaree split, but they have already built more queen cells in this bottom box, which means they're basically trying to swarm again, even though I've split them up. I have heard from other beekeepers that this can happen, so the procedure now is going to be to take the queen away from this box, put it in a nuke. Luckily I've got that little blue box next door. So we will split them up so they definitely won't swarm. And then what I probably will do is join them together again. So here you can see what they've done. Swarm cell, swarm cell, swarm cell, swarm cell. In 1 week I can come back, remove all the queen cells, the extra queen cells that they've made because their queen is missing, and then merge this queen with this colony again. We'll do that with a piece of newspaper. Pretty much everything is going to plan. Nothing too bad happening. A few colonies still trying to swarm, but I think I have sorted that out.
by splitting them up. Huge amounts of honey coming in, and just like last week, we've got a little snack. Whoa, that was the sugar that I needed. Things are currently looking really good, but I will, as always, keep you updated with how the season progresses. Oh, fingers are so sticky.
Now, if you have a strong colony of bees during the spring and summer, you will likely experience something pretty exciting, and that is a nectar flow. And what exactly is a nectar flow? It's when there's an abundance of nectar secreting flowers that the bees are making the most of and basically bringing that nectar back to their beehives. People call it a nectar flow because nectar is literally flowing into the hives. And you really notice that week to week. If you put on an empty honey box onto the hive with no weight to it, you can come back a week later and it'll be absolutely full of honey already. It's crazy how quick this can happen. Nectar flows that I have experienced last anywhere from a few days to a few weeks long. And this is all dependent on the type of flowers that are flowering and also the weather. If it's raining when the flowers are blooming, the bees aren't going to be able to go out and forage the nectar, which means you're not going to have any honey. There's a lot of factors involved when it comes to a good nectar flow. And that's why honey crops year to year vary so much, is because the weather's always different. The flowers are always secreting different amounts of nectar. But if everything does come together perfectly, you can have many, many boxes full to the brim with honey in only a matter of weeks. From observing my beehives, I've seen about 10 kilograms of honey come into a beehive within 1 week. This is when you realize how much can get done when 50,000 or so bees are working together with one goal in mind. Now, what makes beekeeping quite interesting is that depending on where you live, you have different sources of nectar available to the bees. And these different flowers that the nectar is coming from produces very different types of honey. Although it is possible to harvest single origin honey, which is honey made up of mostly one type of flower's nectar, for most beekeepers, you sort of make do with what you have around you. Here in the southwest of England countryside, we have hawthorn, clover, blackberry, lime trees, horse chestnut, sweet chestnut, and they're just a few of the common plants that contribute to the overall honey crop. If you wanted to get a single origin honey, you would have to put your beehives next to a certain plant where there's an abundance of them. This spring has been a particularly good one, with plenty of warm weather and a surplus of honey coming into the hives. So it's time to harvest some spring honey. So some of my beehives are getting incredibly high now. It's the 20th of May, and I think I'm gonna do something that I've never actually done before, and that is a spring harvest. Never before have I actually had enough honey in the spring to bother harvesting it. I've always just waited until July time and then done a big harvest. So we're gonna open up this hive and see what we can take off. Not all of it, but maybe a box or two. Oh, wow. So this, for example, is a full frame of honey. Both sides, you can see it's capped over with the white capping, which means that it's ready to harvest. The important thing when you harvest honey is just to make sure it's got a low enough moisture content. When the bees cap it over like this, it means that it's ready to take. There's probably 1.5 kilograms, 2 kilograms in there, which is crazy. So from going through all the hives, we've got this box full of honey, and also this one, even heavier. Oh, I can barely lift it. Now these are actually brood boxes. They're a little bigger than the supers. I can see why people don't use them as honey boxes, because if you have to lift a lot of them, your back is going to be broken. But I'll just show you what we've got in here, because it's rather impressive. We've got about 15 frames like that. I don't know how much weight of honey we've got, but it's quite a bit. And there is just a perfectly full super frame. They've really built the comb far off the frame. It's so thick. That is such nice honey. Wow. Now we're not actually going to take the honey right now. We're going to take it maybe tomorrow or the next day, and I'm going to put on this board. This is a one-way escape board. Bees can go down, but then they can't get back up. So we place this on top of the hive, then we put the honey box on top. The bees come out of the honey box. No more bees in the super. and the honey box should be nice and empty of bees. That's the plan. So the one-way board goes on top of the hive and then goes on the box of honey. Yeah, quite high. So in a couple of days, we're going to come back and take the honey home and do a spring harvest. I think we've got quite a bit of honey already. It's 2 days after I put the escape boards on. So there's not many bees in here because I used those escape boards, but there's still a few. So we've got this blower. We're going to put that straight in the car where it's safe. First box. We've already got 3 boxes here. We can probably fit another 2 on top, and then we're going to have to start putting boxes in the back. I'm going to put another super on this because basically what I've done is I've taken off some boxes and now there's the same amount of bees but they're confined into a smaller space. So I'm going to give them another box and on goes the lid. Wow, that was successful. We got all the honey out. I'll tell you what, having a mini blower like this is so handy. It doesn't hurt the bees. The bees are tough. They just get blown away and then they fly back to their home. It's crazy how quickly the bees come and find it all again. So you have to get quickly in the van. Oh, there's still loads of bees in this one. But the trick to getting them out is just to leave them in the box and close the door to the van. All the bees will fly to the windows. I'll let them out later. There's only a few frames in that one. And now for this great big one, which feels like it's gonna fall over any minute now. There we go. That's the spring harvest in the van. Now I must go home, bring everything into the kitchen and extract it all into buckets. It's better than last year. Last year I had hundreds of bees flying all around my head when I was driving.
So what flowers do I suspect this honey to have come from? Over the past month there's been a variety of plants flowering, notably the hawthorn in the hedgerows and the dandelions in the fields, and also a neighbour's brassica crop that had gone to flower. I think it could have been oilseed rape, which is known for giving a good crop of honey. It's pretty hard to know exactly what flowers this honey is made from, and you'd have to do lab tests to find out and have an accurate result. So let's run through the process of extracting the frames of honey. So first, a frame of honey is taken out of the box and the wax cappings are cut off. All frames are different, some are fully capped over with wax, some not at all. So each frame is dealt with slightly differently, but these wax cappings, if there are any, they need to be cut off to allow the honey to come out of the cells. This is done with either a knife or an uncapping fork. And once the wax cappings have been removed, the frame is placed alongside 2 others in this 3-frame manual extractor, which spins the honey out of the frames. This shiny stainless steel piece of equipment cost me about £150. So the honey is being thrown out of the frames to the side of the extractor, it then drips down to the bottom, and once there's a decent amount of honey collected at the bottom of the extractor, the valve is opened to allow the honey to flow out through a couple of sieves. This basically filters it before going into the final bucket. After extracting 2 or 3 boxes, it does become quite a repetitive task. Once you know how to do it, it's just a case of doing it over and over again until it's all done. But I kind of like that. I quite enjoy the repetitiveness of it, being able to put on some music in the kitchen and just extract a load of honey. Once all the honey is in buckets, I double check the moisture content with a refractometer. The reading showed 17% water content, which means it's at a legal level. 20% is the cutoff for all honey in the UK, apart from I think heather honey, which is 23%. So we're going to dive a little deeper into the science of honey. First, it starts as nectar from flowers. In this form, it probably wouldn't taste that sweet, as it's mostly made up of water. When the weather is right and the flowers are secreting nectar, the bees go out of their hive, collect that nectar and bring it back to the hive. This is where the bees do some pretty cool chemistry. The complex sugar in the nectar called sucrose is converted into simple sugars like glucose and fructose using the enzyme invertase that the bees produce. Once the nectar has been inverted, it is slower to crystallize and it's also easier to digest. The liquid is then dehydrated by the bees until it has less than 20% water content. And at this point you have an incredibly stable food product that will pretty much last forever. As well as being a lovely sweet pantry essential, honey also contains many other beneficial things such as vitamins and minerals, antioxidants, and of course all the pollen granules from the plants. It's actually amazing how much variety you can find in honey, especially from beekeepers selling single origin honey. This variety of honey is something that you don't really see in the supermarkets because the honey, when it's produced in mass, is normally a mix of loads of different honeys blended together. I think it's kind of like wine. If you buy a wine which has been made from grapes from just one field and then compare it to a wine from another field, they could be very different. However, when wine is blended, it all kind of tastes more similar. Well, it took me the best part of 3 days, but we finally have the honey extracted from the beehives. Now every single one of these buckets is loaded with honey and we have a total of 90 kilograms. So this is 20 kilograms more than my best ever harvest. And this is only the spring honey. Now over the past 3 years, I've only ever managed to harvest a summer crop, which is normally harvested around the end of June, early July. But all this honey here is like a bonus crop, which I never have managed to get before. And what this shows is that my colonies were strong enough to go out and make the most of all the spring flowers. But my beehives are still growing. There's more and more bees being born. The colonies are getting bigger and bigger, ready for the summer crop. Every year I've been keeping bees, it's quite clear that there's a period of 2 or 3 weeks in June, normally middle end of June, where heaps of honey come in. So if the same thing happens this year, hopefully we're gonna get a load more honey. But what I want to do with this spring harvest is turn it into a soft set honey. You're controlling the crystallization so that when the honey crystallizes, it crystallizes in a very fine structure and so it stays softer.
So we are now in the peak summer nectar flow and you can see at the front of the hives how much activity there is. The last week has been about 30 degrees every day, which is just about perfect, I think, for the bees to fly and collect a load of nectar. So the job for today is to simply put boxes on top of the hives if they need it. I'm intrigued to see how much nectar they've stored in the hive since 1 week ago, but I have a feeling it could be quite a bit. The cracking is because they've stuck everything together, and if they stuck everything together, it means they've managed to collect a load of resources to do that. Oh, yep. Heavy, heavy, heavy. I can see eggs in there, so queen's still here. That's the only worry, is if they swarm at this time of year, they take a load of the honey with them. So we've got to make sure they don't do that. That's probably 10, 15 kilos. If that's 10, then this is like 20. Gosh, this is way heavier. but that's how it's looking right now. Half of it probably is capped over. The other side, similar amount. But every frame in this super is basically like that. And I definitely need to put another box on there. So there's a completely empty box on there. We'll come back in 1 week and see how much it's full. And that's another weekly inspection done. A couple of them are still trying to swarm, so I had to make some splits, which is actually a good thing because I'm making splits ready before the winter so that we will go into winter with more hives, and then next spring if some die, then it means we've made a few extras to keep the numbers up. Very, very happy to see how much honey is coming in right now. If it carries on for another week or two, we could have a lot of honey to deal with. I can't quite believe the weather we're having this summer. It's been good and bad. There's advantages to it being hot. The bees can fly, they can forage without the rain getting in the way. But there's also disadvantages, like the fact that plants, to produce nectar, they need water. There's been a sudden change where there's been loads of nectar coming into the hives and now it's just completely stopped. There's lots of factors involved, but I've heard from other beekeepers that yeah, having it too dry can be very bad. It's middle of July and we're going to start the summer harvest. It doesn't feel long ago at all that we were taking off the spring honey, and we've been busy with lots of different things over the summer, and now the main job is to get the summer honey off the hives, and the first step is to put the escape boards on like we did before. So at this time of year, once the bees have stored loads of honey in the hives, the wasps can cause some problems. The wasps like to rob out the honey from the beehives. They're lazy, they don't want to collect their own. They make the most of the honey that the bees have collected, and I don't want them to do that. And often you'll see the wasps get into fights. The wasp goes in, the bees then attack the wasp, they gang up on the wasp, and then they normally, if the colony is strong, they kill the wasp and they dealt with it well. But if the colony isn't so strong, there can be problems. If you have a small hive, like a small colony, maybe like this one here, you've got to be extra careful because the wasps can completely wipe out a small colony like that. So what I like to do is make the entrance smaller. Like the entrance is quite big now, and it's hard to defend a big entrance. So you can put in a block of wood, like this one. So by making the entrance much less than half the size, it gives the bees less sort of space to defend. It'll give them more chance of fighting off the wasps. But as you can see now, there's a load of bees waiting to come in that can't come in because the entrance is too small. But at this time of year, it's safer to do that than leave it open. So we'll have a quick look inside. Just double check that the honey's ready to take. Last week it was looking pretty much there. This is why I do it. It smells amazing. It's heavy. Everything about that is just perfect. I made up a load more of these escape boards. So we're gonna put this on top. And now we have to make sure there are no gaps in the hive. We can't have anything getting in, because we're basically taking all the bees out of the honey boxes into the bottom box. So there will be no bees to defend at the top if wasps come in or other bees get in. I learnt my lesson last year after getting so much of my honey taken away from me at the last minute. Lid on, there's no holes in the top anymore, and then the roof goes on. Nothing is getting in there apart from me tomorrow to take the honey off. Now to do the rest of them. That's a big one. There we go, a couple of hours of heavy lifting later. We've got all the escape boards on the hives, and tomorrow's job will be to bring home the honey and harvest it. Today I'm going to harvest the summer honey from my bees. They've been pretty busy over the past few weeks collecting a load of nectar, and yeah, today's job is to get all that honey off the hives into the van and back home to the kitchen, where I will extract it over the next few days. Let's get to work. This is always my favorite part of beekeeping, is sort of seeing the results and seeing the harvest after the year of work that you put in. Beekeeping, maybe when you have 1 or 2 hives, is like pure hobby and a fun thing to do. But when you have more hives, and I've realized having like 12, I think I've got 12 hives now, it certainly it's work. It's like a proper job. Oh no, wasps getting in. No, that's not good. There's a hole in the hive and the wasps are finding a way in. Hope there's no more holes. Right, we better get this honey off as soon as possible before the wasps take any more. Tools we're going to use today: a mini battery powered blower. Might not need the smoker, but I will need my hive tool. The hive tool is always in this bucket of soda crystals, keeps them clean. Let's start harvesting the honey. And then get it as quickly as I can into the van. There we go, first box. Box number 2. Now that looks a little like something you'd see in a horror film. A ton of wasps and bees all in my van. I'm gonna let them out. Whoa. Yeah, you wouldn't want to be driving home with that. If you don't like insects, this is the worst place to be. There's bees all over the place. And then I just found a grasshopper. That was so hectic. Just got to close the gate. Go on, bees, get out. Get out of there. Now there's one on my neck. Once we're moving and we're away from the beehives, I can take the windows down, like now. And as many of the bees can get out as possible. Woo! That's the honey in the car and we are escaping. It's like I'm a bear and I just robbed the honey. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 21, 22, 23, 23 boxes. That's madness. And that is what most of the frames look like.
As I started cutting off the wax cappings from the first frames of honey, I couldn't help but reflect on the last few years of beekeeping. I was given a colony of bees back in 2021. I didn't know anything about beekeeping, and I certainly had no idea of the journey it would lead me on. I've never really been that great at sticking with projects very long. I often get bored quick and move on, so I even surprised myself that I'm here right now for the 4th year in a row, still keeping bees and harvesting honey. I spent a total of 5 full days in my little kitchen extracting the honey and filtering it into buckets, and I have approximately 150 kilograms of summer honey, which means in total this year, including the spring harvest, my bees produced around 240 kilos of honey. I wasn't quite prepared for this quantity, but now I had to get it all into glass jars. A couple of days later, 1,000 glass jars arrived on a pallet outside my house. It's a pallet full, so I need to get them off the street and into my bedroom. That's all the jars, 1,500 of them. I should have a few left over. I don't think I'll quite have 1,500. Plan now is to wash these jars and then get the honey into the jars. This is pretty repetitive work. The valve is opened on the bucket until the jar is full. It is then placed on the scales to double check it's over 227 grams, and then the jar lid is put on. So for the next few days I sat down and filled up jars, whilst watching some YouTube videos that got me excited for the coming winter.
It's getting a little bit out of hand now. I've got a load of boxes. They are all nets, so I will make them up. I'll probably just make them up to order, so I don't have to do them all at the same time. There's a whole load of them. Then I've got some other packaging material, some like wood wool to package the boxes up. Then there's some tissue paper, a tissue paper dispenser. Yeah, an awful lot of stuff.
I'm currently sat in my very messy bedroom surrounded by boxes stacked to the ceiling. I've got buckets of honey over here, I've got jars of honey over here, I've got all the packaging and boxes that I'm going to send my honey out in over there. It's chaos. But I wanted to take a little moment to talk about local honey versus mass-produced cheap honey that you can find in the supermarket. And it's something that I haven't really had an opinion on until recently, because I've been very spoiled as a beekeeper. I haven't eaten or even tasted the cheap supermarket honey for years. I received a lot of comments and feedback last year after I sold my honey, and people were saying to me, "Oh, your honey tastes so much better than the stuff I find at the shops. Your honey has so much more flavour." And I was sort of questioning this, thinking, is this kind of a placebo thing where you buy something for a higher price that is locally produced, and you, in your head, you think, it's got to be better, so you make it up in your head that it's better. So I decided the other day to go to the shop and buy some of the cheapest honey I could find. Now it's ridiculous actually, how cheap you can find honey. This honey costs £2.30 per kilogram. So this bottle on its own costs less than £1, 79p. And you compare that with local honey, which goes for about £28 per kilo. I can absolutely understand why people buy the supermarket stuff and not local stuff. So it's over 10 times more expensive. This stuff firstly isn't local. You don't actually get much information about where this honey is from. It just says produced in the UK using a blend of honeys, non-EU honeys. This is from China. This is from anywhere, we don't know. Firstly, let's compare the smell. Smell of supermarket. Smell of mine. This stuff doesn't smell of anything. It has a little sort of hint of caramelized, it has a hint of caramel. And I've heard during the pasteurization and filtering process, they do heat this stuff up quite a lot. So that could be why it smells a little bit caramelized. It's got a sweet flavor, a nice flavor. I've got to try some of this as well. A little palate cleanser. And now for some of my honey that I've been harvesting recently. Whoa. Whoa. That's mad. I wasn't actually expecting it to be so different. So in conclusion, the honey which you can find very cheap doesn't hold much flavor, doesn't hold much smell. It tastes sweet, tastes very sweet, just as sweet as honey. Just really lacks the sort of really interesting flavors that you find with the more locally produced stuff. Very interesting. I'm very glad that I finally sort of done this little experiment for myself. Now, I don't know a huge amount about the way mass-produced cheap honey is made, but I have heard, and there were lots of sort of tests done on mass-produced honey, and it revealed that lots of them do include just a lot of sugar syrup. So yeah, that's my little price and taste comparison between my stuff that I've been harvesting this summer and cheap stuff that you can find at the supermarket. So yeah, obviously my biased opinion is that you should support your local beekeeper and buy some of the expensive stuff, but the incredibly high quality, really tasty stuff. Yeah, that's obviously for you to make your mind up. I just wanted to do a little comparison and see. Anyway, my job now is to set up a little production line in my bedroom. I've got hundreds of these jars of honey which are ready to be sent out. I've got a load of packaging boxes, packaging material. I've got to tie the labels on, package them up nicely, send them out. I don't know how long it's going to take, maybe the next few weeks or months. Yeah, selling some of this honey, and I'm really looking forward to being able to share some of this honey with you guys who have supported this YouTube channel, watched these videos. It feels so good to be nearly there with the finished product. My very kind friends who give me a hand with the labels each year once again help me make these beautiful little swing tags with all the legal information that you need to display when selling honey. And here we have the finished product. In my opinion, it's the most incredible food product that nature gives us. Over the next few months, I'll be selling the honey on my online store. I don't know how long it will be before it sells out, but the link is below in the video's description to my shop. I'll also be making some candles this winter, and I'll post these up on the store too. I'll quickly show you the process of getting a package of honey ready to send out. So firstly, I take a jar of honey from my stockpile. I've got about 700 jars currently. Once I've got the jar, the first thing to do is print off a best before label. I've got this label gun. I can set it to any date I like, and I just press the button, out comes a label, and the best before date is a date in 2029. Now, honey doesn't really need a best before date. It doesn't go off if it's stored correctly, but it's a legal requirement that you need if you're going to sell it. And on the bottom of the jar, I stick the best before label. That's just so it's nicely out the way. I don't really like the look of it. And then I can attach the proper label. So we take one of these labels and also a piece of raffia string. Sometimes you can break the raffia string into separate parts so you get more out of it. So I fold the raffia in half, push it through the hole in the swing tag label, loop it around itself, and then I pull it tight, and we've attached the label to the raffia. I then get my jar and simply tie a couple of knots so that the label is now attached to the jar. And there we go, we've got a jar of honey, the label attached, the best before underneath, and now we can get that ready to put in a box. I've got a roll here of 850 meters of tissue paper. Now I wanted to wrap the jars of honey in something, not only for protecting the jar of honey when I send it out, but also kind of looks nice. I've got this dispenser, which means I can pull some tissue paper out and then rip it. Put the jar of honey in the middle, and then I lightly just wrap it around. Not too tight because I don't want to bend that label. And there we go, jar of honey wrapped in tissue paper. And then we have to build one of these boxes, and it's pretty simple. You just fold up the edges into a box. Ta-da! We have a box. And now I've got this wood wool material, and that's basically the packaging to make sure it doesn't rattle around in there. So I lay a nice amount of that in the bottom, and I've worked out that I can fill these boxes with 4 jars and the postage price will be the same. And then I just pack out the rest of the box with more wood wool, because we don't want these jars getting damaged at all. And once that's nice and tight in there, I close the box up. I've got some craft tape which I'm going to secure the box up with. And there we go, we've got a box packaged up with 4 jars of honey. I've got some weighing scales here, just so I can double check the weight. And yep, it's 1,775 grams, so it's under the 2 kilogram weight limit, which means it's the cheaper postage. I've got a label printer which will print off the Royal Mail label that will allow me to send it. And then I can take these down to the post office using drop and go, which means I can basically turn up at the post office, drop a load of parcels, and I don't need to wait in the queue. They're already prepaid, and then yeah, I don't waste anyone's time at the post office. And that is the process of getting the honey from me to the people who are buying it. I can't quite believe we've got the finished product now. I started beekeeping 4 years ago, and I've spent the last 4 years learning and building up the apiary, making a ton of mistakes, and finally we're at a point here where we've got actually quite a lot of honey to sell.
Thanks so much for watching my beekeeping videos over the past year. I really appreciate the support. If you managed to get hold of some of the honey from my bees, then I really hope you enjoy it. And wherever you live in the world, I would say find your local beekeeper, support them, buy some honey from them. I hope these videos have given you a little insight into the world of beekeeping and some of the hard work that goes into creating a jar of honey. But for now, that's another season of beekeeping over. I've got to get these colonies ready for winter now, and then I can have a little bit of a break over the winter months, which will be nice. And then I'll see you next year for some more beekeeping. I'll see you again soon.